Hey, welcome to Fun Friday with Pastor Josh. Fun is something that provides mirth or amusement, enjoyment or playfulness. We're going to talk about what fun looks like today and maybe even get into some fun on this edition of Fun Friday. Hello, welcome to our Fun Friday podcast. And I say fun a little bit lightly because I want to talk to you a little bit about scariest moments. So we're talking about Fun Friday, and what I guess I mean by that is that this is still kind of a personal thing, and I want to be able to share it with you. And so, you know, I don't know about you. I don't know if you really enjoy to talk about the things that the scary things in your life that might not sound fun to regurgitate those and to share those again. But I feel like I should, and so on this Fun Friday, I'm just going to share a couple scary moments in my life because, all of us, I think, at some point have probably had a scary moment, but a lot of those moments also define, at least how we responded to those moments can define our lives, and honestly, I think some of the things that are scariest moments in our lives can be things that we've worked through or are working through, will need to work through, that the Lord wants to work through. And so I just want to be a little transparent with you today, share some of those things. Maybe you didn't know about me, just a little history, I guess, and talk a little bit about the fear that we're all kind of wrestling with. And so, a couple of things come to mind, right away, I guess. I always tease my mom, who will most likely watch this podcast. Always tease her about the time that I almost died in Yellowstone. We were in Yellowstone. I don't remember exactly where it was. I was pretty young at the time. I think I was like 7 or 8 at the time, and so I don't remember exactly where it was. But it was a waterfall of some kind, and so there's this really giant overlook, and so there's this fence, and there was like some grass, probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 feet in width. This area of grass outside of the fence, and then after that it was a drop off, and so they had this fence before the grass so that you wouldn't go out there, right? And so we were taking pictures with our cameras, and Mom and Dad had gotten us some little cameras, me and my brother, that had the disposable film. I don't know if you remember what that was like, but they were like little kid cameras, basically dummy proof. You could use them, and we really couldn't destroy them. Really easy, and so my little brother, had dropped his, and he's 18 months younger than me, and so he had dropped his on that spot that I told you about, that grassy spot just outside the fence, but it had gone down a little ways, and so Mom and Dad said, "Well, Josh, you should just crawl under the fence real quick and grab that camera," because I could see the camera. It was right there, it was kind of on the edge. And think about it, I was like an 8-year-old. And so, sure enough, I crawl underneath the fence and I kind of shimmy down there a little bit, and then I grab the camera. But I'm thinking, like, if this thing, like, gives way or crumbles, or if I stumble or something, like, looking back on it, I was like, I can't believe I had sure footing and wasn't clumsy at all and was able to get the camera and get back. And so that was pretty scary, actually. I remember getting lost as a kid in Walmart. I remember getting lost one time when we were out hunting. I was really young. I think it was my first year hunting, and my dad had gone down one draw, and I was supposed to be going up the other, and I kind of got disoriented, and so I was kind of wandering around, which I know you're really not supposed to do that. And so, I was lost for like half a day, where I didn't know where anyone was, and I don't think they knew where I was. They didn't really seem too concerned once I finally got back to the car. But I don't know if they knew how lost I really felt. But that was a pretty scary thing, wondering if I was going to be stuck out there. And I didn't really know the area that well at that time. And actually after that, because of that situation, I ended up learning how a ton of wilderness survival stuff. Actually, as a older teenager, began teaching wilderness survival classes and whatnot. Like, I really got into it because of that situation, and so that was kind of a cool, I guess you would say, like a redemption of that, teaching people how to survive in the wilderness, and so that's kind of a cool thing too that you might not have known. I would say also, like, I've always kind of struggled with like scorpions and stuff. I watched a movie when I was a kid, and somehow that scarred me. I don't know what happened with the scorpion exactly, but and so I had an opportunity to overcome my fear when we were in Africa. In Africa, they had this zoo that was kind of an unofficial zoo. I don't even know if it really was an actual zoo, but they had a ton of animals, different things, and they had these huge, I mean, huge, I don't know, is that a fish story? Uh, I mean, it's like this big, huge black scorpions, which if you know anything about scorpions, they're, the darker they are and the larger they are, the less, poisonous they are. So I was pretty safe, honestly. But still, like I held this scorpion in my hand. It was crawling all over and all its legs and stuff, and really pointy. And as a trip leader for the missions trip, it's one of our fun days, and we were trying to do some cool stuff with the kids. And so I was holding it, and I was really trying to act really tough. I'm really tough. It's crawling all over my hands and stuff. And finally got to one spot. I was like, oh, I dropped it. But actually what happened was I kind of freaked out a little bit. I just didn't want the kids to know. I couldn't handle it anymore. But I'm still working through that. Okay, that's probably why I don't live in Arizona. Is that there's no scorpions here in Montana, to my knowledge. If there is scorpions, don't tell me. I just don't really care to know on that. But I think with all the scariest moments, I think my most scary moment was the time that I almost drowned. We used to swim quite a bit in Spring Meadow Lake in Helena. That's where I grew up, and I'm not a great swimmer. I mean, I'm really I can swim, but not like real long. I don't probably has a lot more to do with exercise and just physical shape and swimming and that kind of thing, to be able to tread water long enough and whatever. But my brother, who's younger than me, like I mentioned, he's like a fish. Like he can swim like nobody's business. And so we were out in the middle of the lake, which I knew was kind of a bad idea anyway, on this boat. And so we were out kind of swimming, and I was gonna get back in the boat, but somebody had played a prank on us. You know how teenagers can be. And so they had stole the boat and were kind of pedaling away with it. And so then I kind of started to freak out. So I was trying to swim and whatnot, and everyone else was swimming around me. They're all swimming back to shore. And I was trying to swim, but I just couldn't swim much anymore. Like I was really trying, I just couldn't. And so I started to go under, and I was under for a little while. And my brother, I know this is really a humbling thing, my younger brother ended up saving my life. And I literally almost drowned that day. And, I've always kind of struggled with water a little bit because of that. And so, which is interesting because I love ships. But I don't necessarily love to be out in the middle of the ocean on them. So it's a little bit of a thing where I'm enamored, and I do love the older ships and stuff. I have a couple in my office. But as far as swimming and whatnot, and being out in the middle of the ocean or the middle of anything like that, I kind of shy away from it. And so that's stuff that I'm still working through. But I mean, how hard is it for us to get over our fears? To actually tackle those, to talk about what it is that's behind all of it. And so for me, one of the things is that in each of those situations, for the most part, the more intense ones, like the drowning and that kind of thing, it has a lot to do with control. I realized around that time with the drowning possibility that I had actually a lot less control over my life than I thought. So the thing that it reminded me of was how nothing in life is really certain. We don't know our next moment. I couldn't have guessed that day that I was going to have that possible drowning happen. And I still thank God that it didn't actually happen, that I didn't drown that day. So you look at that and you just realize that none of us necessarily knows the time or the hour. We don't know. Moses told us in the Psalms that we should, he prayed that God would give us wisdom, that the knowledge to know the importance of numbering our days, that we would number our days so we might gain a heart of wisdom. And so I would encourage us today, even as I share some of these scary moments, life can be scary. Life can be full of scary moments. But in the middle of all those, recognizing who holds us in his hand and choosing to trust him in the middle of all that, and to constantly give our fears over to him, knowing that he doesn't desire for us to have a spirit of fear, but of love, power, and a sound mind. And so in this moment, recognizing that I think all of us probably have fears that we're working through, and even with all this virus stuff, I encourage us, would you ask God today to say, Lord, are there fears that I'm wrestling with right now, anxieties and worries and things that I shouldn't have, that I should give to you? And so I encourage you to do that today. As you think about the scary moments of your life, recognizing that really He has His eye on the sparrow, and so I know He watches me. And so giving our lives over the one who watches us and who holds us in His hand, the one who dances over us. And so I would just encourage you with that. Let Him take your fears, and let Him give you a spirit of peace today. Thanks for joining me this week on this podcast. I pray God's blessing on you this week, no matter where you might be going, online or on site, to church this weekend, to the gathering together as the church. And so I just encourage you to have a great weekend, and join us again next week for our podcast beginning next Monday.